What is grief if not love persevering? A quote that is as true as it is simple, but what happens when that grief is just too much? When it consumes you and has a trickle-down effect on everything else that you hold dear, resulting in the formation of the greatest evil that you've ever seen. My name is Jiggy. If you're new here, glad you came. Been here a while? It's good to see you again, friend. Come with me and examine how the creation of Dr. Eggman was Professor Gerald's endgame all along. Coming from a long line of intellectual minds, Gerald Robotnik was destined for success in some capacity or another. Heralded as one of the greatest minds in history, he surely lived up to his name. From groundbreaking inventions, leading discoveries of ancient civilizations, primordial beings, and technology, this is a man that had it all. A bit of an ego falls into that plate as well, and rightfully so. Spawning two sons who then went on to inherit some of his intelligence and achieve successes of their own, including but not limited to families of their own. There's no telling that Gerald's awards and praise would come to an end just as quickly as he obtained them. The biggest failure that plagued the scientist till his death being handed to him in the form of a granddaughter that he loved almost as much as work itself. Maria Robotnik, the child was named, and something about her drew her entire family to her side. Unfortunately, the third generation Robotnik was diagnosed with an incurable disease that made living much harder than it needed to be for a kid her age. And so, what does one with a boundless amount of intellect such as Gerald do in this situation? The only thing he knows how: experiment. Seeing that the medicine of Earth was of no use to curing Maria's ailing conditions, Gerald takes matter into his own hands in an attempt to solve the problem plaguing his family. Albeit against the wishes of his sons, and in particular Maria's father and her mother. The scientist knew that this would draw some distance between himself and his family, but when a mind such as his had already fixed so much in the outside world, it only makes sense that he'd be able to correct what was happening in his own, right? It should be noted that although Maria's canon age is unknown, we can deduce that the child is around her preteen to teenage years. Let's agree on an average of about 12 to 13 for now. Old enough to somehow convince her parents and extended family that her grandfather knows what he's doing and agrees to travel to space with him for however long it'll take to finally rid her of this ailment. Maria and Gerald soon find themselves aboard the space colony, ARC. From this point on, the Robotnik story is focused solely on that of granddaughter and grandfather, but the entire time there's someone in the background brewing their life goals as we speak. Choosing to forego all interactions with family members not named Maria, Gerald dedicated what would be the rest of his life towards finding a cure. As the story goes, we know that design after design failed, until the final product would end up being Shadow the Hedgehog, the ultimate life form. But even with Shadow's limitless potential, no cure for Maria could be seen at the end of that tunnel. Everything from ancient battle units to the blood of aliens, there was no end in sight. Suddenly, the smartest mind in the universe could not figure out a problem that had at first rivaled past endeavors. Some progress eventually was made, however. Yet, just when a flash of light was beginning to form at the end of that tunnel, no one expected that it would come from the muzzle of a .45 caliber. With the death of Maria, everything that the Robotnik family strived for began to disintegrate right in front of their very eyes. The patriarchal head now found himself jailed within the confines of a remote island, only to then be blamed worldwide for an accident that occurred on the ship that he designed, reportedly resulting in the deaths of himself, a few dozen researchers, and his own granddaughter. A father and mother now left without a daughter, an uncle and an aunt without their niece, and one young boy left without his cousin. The relationship between Eggman and Maria can be described as, yeah, I suppose they exist. Sonic Frontiers' egg memos have shown us that the two Robotniks didn't interact all that often, and knew not much about each other outside of the fact that they were related. As previously stated though, something about Maria drew everyone's attention, except for Ivo. Ivo was a weird one, but his heart was in the right place. A desire to be a great scientist like his grandfather, but the early peaks at a blossoming narcissistic demeanor startled everyone, even the more steadfast minds in the family. It's believed that even as a child, Ivo was boundlessly creating things, and one would be hard-pressed to say that he didn't seek validation, such as any other child. With the entire family focused on Maria though, he was seldom offered what he sought. One man most likely took note of his genius, however, Gerald Robotnik. It's stated that in the conversations with Gerald during the events of Shadow Generations, that from whatever point Gerald and Maria were taken from, his sons and him had little to no communication. Before that moment, however, when all members of their family were found on Earth, there was bound to be consistent communication between all parties. While Gerald has never explicitly talked about Eggman in any medium throughout the franchise, we all know how families work. Post the Ark incident events, a family stricken with grief is all that's left. Ivo is far from the center of it as well, with everyone caring about the death of their patriarchal head and even more so about the life gone too soon, Maria. In a twisted way, this was supposed to be Ivo's moment, the chance for him to be the center of attention, and yet nothing came of it except for solitude, misplaced anger, and a thirst to be heard. On the other side of God knows where, the still alive Gerald begins his descent into madness, still being forced to work for the same scum that took away his reason for living. Within the confines of his mental and physical prisons, a plan was devised. Use their own tools against them for even thinking that the crimes committed would go unpunished. He needed the help of someone just as mad as him in his current state though. Well, that just wouldn't be possible as there was no survivors from the Ark incident, and who would listen to the ramblings of an old man? No one. Except the one person who wanted his validation all along. While he may not have anticipated everything that Ivo would eventually do to the world around him, the one thing that Gerald did understand about his grandson is that he yearned to be just like his grandfather. And through a series of well-timed events, the young Robotnik would soon enough be the mad scientist that he was shaped to be from birth. Eggman's obsession with Gerald pre the conclusion of Sonic Adventure 2's events presumably knew no bounds, which can be seen from his tendency to always try and create something everlasting, somewhat akin to the legacy that his grandfather left behind. A device, a civilization, a concept, anything that could stand the test of time in the same manner that Gerald's work did for his. Through his thirst for knowledge, it was only a matter of time before he happened upon the journal, one that could lead to this forever finally being achieved. The only thing that it would lead to, though, is bringing society as we know it to the brink of extinction. There being no one else outside of Eggman interested in Gerald's research is by design, but I will admit that a lot of coincidence did play a huge role in things. As far as we're concerned, the only evil in Sonic's world outside of the Black Arms is Eggman. Should this have been the comics, then it'd be a bit different, but even then, not many antagonists in the world have as deep of a connection to Gerald as his own grandson does. If the professor in the time leading up to his execution happened to remember that one troubled little boy idolized him to such an unhealthy amount it hurts, he may genuinely be the most intellectual person on the planet we've ever seen. Being so few people to even know about the Ark only leads credence to the theory that it was always Gerald's plan to have Eggman be the one put the events of SA2 into motion as well. His sons and him, by the time he was framed for everything, were already not on speaking terms. In addition to that, having to sit with the thought that your own father is the reason your daughter is no longer here, especially since you were against her going, is maddening in itself. Then there's the idea that none of the other researchers are believed to have survived, and their families, upon hearing that one man was responsible for everything, are bound to want no contact with anything related to that same man. From a forced solitude due to a perceived weirdness to being nothing more than a puppet used by the same man you held in such a high regard, what a life, am I right? I, of course, want to know what you all think about this theory. Do you think I hit the nail on the head, or have I lost my marbles just like Gerald did? I'm also live again today, through Saturday starting at 12 p.m, so be sure to stop in and say what's up. I'll see you all in the next one though.